There's so much uncertainty about what can be done, and there's so many risks in facing what you do, that often the plans are kind of very flexible and we'll adjust as things go on because we're going to do this. And the alternative for a minister who's trying to get something done is a developer who faces many of the same risks, who has a seemingly sophisticated plan and can articulate that, whereas in many respects, the poor communities are more honest about, we'll do it. We don't know what it is, but we'll do it. But then the minister says, I'm going to go with the developer because he's sophisticated. And he's sophisticated in a superficial way. And so part of this is just getting the confidence to be able to say, we can deal with this, and we're going to be explicit about what the concerns are, even if many of them are quite unmanageable and even unforeseeable. Whenever I've dealt with government, most ministers or secretaries like this one, they probably have to make 40 decisions a day. And so most of their decisions are informed by approximately a bumper sticker of information. And the community, as this enumeration, is this is a book, it's a very rich story, and it's the community's story. And he or she often doesn't really get it. They get the bumper sticker and they're making a decision. And so part of this is, how do you describe your story in salient points that are compelling about what you're doing, and confident points too. And so that rich story that has brought you together as a community, what are the 2 or 3 things that when you say to the minister, you've got 5 minutes with the minister, you can't tell him that story, you have to boil it down. And Sheila was giving a presentation at the World Bank with 3 other NGOs to the World Bank president and the board of directors. And so she said to the president, who she had taken around the railroad site in Bombay, she said, Mr. Wolfenson, do you remember that railroad site? And he said, oh yes, Sheila, I remember it very well. So Sheila said, well, what you don't know is that we can't implement that project because of your contracting laws. So that embarrassed him in front of the board of directors and all the bigwigs in Washington. So as he's walking out of the room, he turns to his aide and he said, get that policy changed. So that's what implemented it. And it's that bumper sticker at the right point that brings together exactly the types of questions you're talking about. Talking to experts, your game is so much better than the expert's game. It's an order of magnitude better. So it's how do you articulate it succinctly and confidently in ways that are compelling to people who can fund it. At the end of the day, to move things significantly, you need external resources. And it's not sufficient the resources you'll generate in the communities. As important and significant as that is, you have to leverage it. And if you're going to leverage it, you have to expect the person or the institution, the government, the bank, whoever it is, to seek accountability. In 1972, they were about your size. They're now the biggest NGO in the world. They're equivalent to a very big corporation. If you go to Dhaka, they've got a big building and all their leaders have been cycled through Harvard. They're really an extraordinary institution. Your institutions are in exactly that point of the urban taking off. Will you become BRACs, or will you stay mom and pop organizations that aren't self-confident? Going to Mahila Milan in Bombay and having her joke and say how important savings were. And Celine took me around to see many of the women and how they'd go collect money, and they didn't want to do it in a basis where they could get the leverage. And I thought, in some ways, this is a very nice feel-good sort of thing, but not finance, and that was wrong. But then as I kept going back and learning about it, what I recognized that in fact that it was an important part of the glue of the community, that people could borrow from each other in times of crisis and not have to go to a money lender, that people could recognize that you could build a community around this mechanism, that people could count on it. And then, as I was learning this, so too was the economics profession, which I find over and over again, the economics profession seems to learn the tricks that they've been doing for years, that the community groups have been doing, and then belatedly says, oh, we were wrong about all that. And so now the economics profession says, being able to get access finance for low-income families is extraordinarily important because it smooths the consumption cycle. And so there's a technical reason for why what I thought was wrong was right, And the community group knew it was right, and so this is the point that Father was saying about your values. I mean, when you have something right, you need to stick with it. But the sense of many of these measures are precisely the sort of measures that an institute like the World Bank would say, and they're wrong. They don't get at the dimensions of what's powerful about this that's very hard to measure, and I don't know how you measure it, Frank. We're particularly interested in working in places where it seems likely that the community organizations have gotten traction with the government so that things can happen. Because I don't think the communities by themselves have the resources to deal with what is a massive problem. So they have to get to the government or they have to get to external resources. And so that's a particular interest to us, to be in places where things are going to happen. As sympathetic as we are to your cause, if you can't get to that point, it's good luck and goodbye. That's nothing we can do about that. We'd love to bring you along, but we're a small foundation. And so the sense is, can you get to the point where you have both the ability and the courage to talk to government in ways that they take you seriously? How do you characterize yourself so that you're in the language of the donors or the government to show that your game is actually so much better? And if it were close, I wouldn't be here. It's a tough story to have poor community groups have a conversation in languages they don't fully articulate. So where we are is trying to get to places that are close to having this connection to do things, to help you to refine what you're doing within your groups, and to help you to articulate that to governments and donors so that you can get more resources. So finally, I want to thank all particularly our evaluators, but all of you for, this is a long 3 days and you're still here and kicking, and that's great.